Hey, good evening, everyone. Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for making it out. So, in my line of tasking, obviously, we're focusing on artifacts and things in the new gallery spaces. For those who may not be aware, we have a very interesting artifact going into Gallery 14. It's an M40 series precision platform. And I contacted our arms curator because I wanted to know a little bit more about it, John Bernstein, and he had limited information. He said, but I can put you in contact with someone who I believe knows something about it. And he put me in contact with this guy called AJ. So I called AJ up and said, hey, I hear you might know a thing or two about this rifle we have going into Gallery 14. He said, I might know a thing or two about it. And this led to a very interesting conversation, very interesting story about this particular artifact. It transcends the gallery space. It transcends Gunnar Pasciuti. It goes back to 2004. To my mind, it's a three-parter. And I'm working on investigating the first part of what this story looks like because it involves a group of Marines who were killed in Ramadi in 2004, Corporal Tommy Parker behind the long gun, and 3 other Marines pulling security. So we're working on sorting out the details, talking to folks who were there. And in that research, I learned that 2 years later, this same rifle that was stolen when those Marines were killed was recovered. And so tonight you're going to get to know very intimately the story on how this rifle was recovered and how it made its way back into the hands of the National Museum of the Marine Corps. So I will shut up and I'll hand it over to my dear friend, Gunnar AJ Pasciuti.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to tell a quick story before I go into a very long story. Gunners are known for one thing, and that's telling stories, right? So the last year, I was just talking in the back, last year I was at the National Museum of the Infantry, like at the Army Soldiers, the Infantry Museum for an International Infantry Conference. And there was 18 different countries that came in to the conversation. And we were there for this week-long exposition that's talking about how each infantry force across the world, how we trained, equipped in a myriad of different topics. One of the things that I described that was a true miss for the conversation that we had was we spent a week inside of the International Infantry Museum at Fort Benning, Georgia, and not once were we taken on a tour of the museum itself. And so what I thought that they missed was this opportunity to say, we have all of these people here, we have this lineage, we have this legacy that the Army wants to be able to have enough of a focus on that they built a museum to it. But what they didn't do is they didn't have the real human connection like we have with individuals like you, is this opportunity to say, I didn't have this tour, I didn't have an opportunity to go through and learn about why it is they love the infantry in their service. And that's easy for us to almost overlook in our service because we look here and say, look at this entire museum. If we were to have the same conference here at the National Museum of the Marine Corps, you better believe there would be opportunities for a lot of the service members from across the world to go through, and we would be very happy to tell them our story. And it's people like you that would do that for us, and I can't thank you enough for that opportunity. So this means the world to be able to talk with an esteemed group such as this to kind of tell our story, and stories like the young men that we see on the screen before you. So I'll go through the story itself, and as Brandon mentioned, there's 3 parts to this story. And please, during the conversation, please raise your hand, ask any questions. No question is off the table for me, and I'm very happy. My interest in doing this kind of conversation is not to. I think what I talked with this morning was, as we understand, there are 3 parts to this story. The beginning part is how we lost the rifle. The second part of the story is what the rifle did and what it did in the hands of the enemy for 2 years. And then the third part of the story is how we got it back. The idea is that we were a part of the story. We were simply the period at the end of the sentence, but we weren't the whole reason why this story is so important to us. So I'm going to go through as much as I know about each instance and kind of try to explain to you our thought process and what we went through as well. So any questions from the group, please throw them up there at any point and I'll be able to answer them. And it'll probably help elicit a little bit more information as well. So I'm not just kind of regurgitating what I know. Okay. Any questions or any rumors or things that people have heard or kind of the story beforehand? Yes, sir.
What's your background?
Okay.
Where'd you come from? How'd you get here?
Oh, thank you very much. You guys, it's almost like you guys have done this before. So I'm from Sunnyvale, California, so Silicon Valley. My mom was a plein air pastel painter. My dad was an Italian immigrant, and he was a long haul truck driver. So I come from a long family of blue collar work up in Northern California. I was a Boy Scout. No military service really in my family. No father other than like the Italian army as a conscript, right? In like the 70s. But he just told me stories about how he would, go AWOL and go drinking with his buddies in Florence. That was his whole thing. But I had family that was involved in the military in World War II, San Francisco kind of region. And so I grew up with a massive sense of love for the country. One of the interesting things, and I know that this is a quintessential immigrant story, is my father as an immigrant really jumped into American culture itself. So he wore a cowboy hat, he went square dancing, he was a long haul truck driver, and wore steel-toed cowboy boot points, right? And was that. Part of that was ensuring that I was raised, in his opinion, as an American boy. So I played baseball, not soccer. I didn't learn my heritage, my language. I didn't learn about that. I learned everything about how to be an American because that's what he wanted me to do, was assimilate to the culture. So I became a Boy Scout as well. My mom was my Webelow den leader, and we kind of raised the ranks. And then my mom held over my head my driver's license. She said I couldn't get my driver's license until I got my Eagle Scout. And so coercion is a very good tool, right? As far as that. So withholding was a super great opportunity. So I got my Eagle Scout in 2000 out of Northern California, and then subsequently got my driver's license very shortly thereafter. I joined the Marine Corps or I depped into the Marine Corps on October 11th, 2001. So 1 month after the Twin Towers fell, I went to the recruiting station. I found this giant, humongous man named Gunnery Sergeant Walter Tanay. He was Samoan, and we all called him Tiny because it was obviously not very tiny. And I joined the delayed entry program and then shipped to boot camp in July of 2002. So saw the Twin Towers fall, was a senior in high school, and was compelled to service, and then kind of started that journey. I became an infantry Marine right after joining. Went through School of Infantry, joined 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines as an infantry Marine. Was a rifleman in OIF 1 in India Company 3-5. Joined the unit probably 6 weeks before we deployed to Kuwait, and I was a Lance Corporal. So I filled a lot of sandbags and dug a lot of fighting holes and was the professional working party guy, right? I was the first class in boot camp to get the new camis, the digital camis. And so that was terrible for all the new guys because when we got to the fleet, everybody knew who we were, right? So all the salts wore black boots and tricolors, and we're running around in digis, and they're like, hey, kind of thing. And so we really couldn't hide. Thankfully, we did this thing called OIF 1 where we got a chance to be able to at least blend in with the other, salt dogs. We got to wear the same tricolor camis they did. So it kind of helped us blend in. But yeah, was a rifleman through that. And then in 2004, in February 2004, I took a scout sniper screening with 3-5 and was, I guess, stubborn or dumb enough not to quit that screening process and was brought into the scout sniper platoon as what we call a PIG in a sniper platoon. PIG stands for Professionally Instructed Gunman. It's not a negative term. There's in a sniper platoon, there's a PIG and there's a HOG. And a PIG is a sniper in training, and a HOG stands for Hunter of Gunmen, and that is a graduate of sniper school. And so there's a lot of things that we'll kind of talk about this evening in regards to the rites of passage that happen when you become a scout sniper, and some of the things that have a lot of symbolism. The Marine Corps is rich with symbolism, as all of our services are, and the sniper community is no different. So I was a sniper. I was a sniper in training, effectively, during Fallujah in 2004. And then came back, went to sniper school, and then took my own sniper team back to Iraq in 2006 for my 3rd tour. And then my career kind of bounced around after that. I was a sniper instructor in Camp Pendleton, and then I joined, went over and became a reconnaissance Marine, joined 3rd Recon Battalion in Okinawa, deployed to Afghanistan as a recon team leader in Nowzad and Marja in 2010, and then went over to 2nd Force Recon Company as a Force Recon team leader out of Camp Lejeune. And then we became a recon instructor out of Camp Pendleton. And then I went to the dark side. And then I put in a commissioning package to become a Marine gunner. And apparently they loosened the standards enough to let me in during that time frame. And Myself and a good friend of mine, Sam Shin, another recon Marine, joined, we called it the Gunner Buddy Program. We were both recon Marines that put in for it and were accepted. I was a battalion gunner at 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines in Kaneohe, Hawaii, and then came back to the School of Infantry for my twilight tour and got to work with the Commandant personally on Force Design 2030 and was created the IMC course, the Infantry Marine course, the revolutionizing of the infantry curriculum for the enlisted infantry Marine, effectively training them like we do our young officers. Yes, sir.
What does an officer gunner do? He's still in the sniper field?
So great question. We're actually not allowed to answer what gunners do because it's a great secret, is because the truest answer to that question is nobody actually knows what a gunner does, right? And so it is the quintessential like warrant officer job. We're like, where's the warrant officer, right? But for us, what it is we are the resident experts inside of the infantry battalion. So the way that, as everyone knows here, is our service has a system where we move our officers that get an opportunity to see into and work within a unit, and then they move on to their PME for a long period of time, and then jump back in. What the gunner does is he or she is the continuity that maintains inside of that. So the idea was at 3-3 as a gunner, I had done all things infantry, and so what I was able to do was provide in role was a mentor to the young lieutenants, a mentor to the enlisted corps itself, and an advisor to the battalion commander. So the battalion commander has a chaplain, they have an adjutant, and they have a surgeon. They also have a gunner as well in the infantry roles specifically. Yes, sir. But then again, yeah, whatever we want kind of thing is the real answer. We kind of go where we're needed. But any other questions before I begin? All right, I do tend to talk fast, so if I'm talking way too fast, tell me to slow down. I've had a ton of caffeine because I flew in on a red eye from LA last night. And so I haven't slept and I've just drank all kinds of caffeine. All right, so as Brandon mentioned earlier, in 2004, Corporal Tommy Parker was a sniper team leader in Ramadi with 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines. So we did a couple of things back then, and I think it's important to, in my upbringing in the Marine Corps, what I've noticed is a lot of times what we've tried to do is gloss over our mistakes and gloss over opportunities where we have not shined the brightest. And I don't know that that's the best way to educate our entire service itself. And so in 2004, the Marine Corps kind of got a black eye, right? This is something that kind of made national news, was 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines. There were 4 Marine snipers that were on a rooftop in Ramadi and were ambushed and killed. And when they were killed, with them, we lost all of their equipment, to include an M40 service rifle. So as Brendan alluded to, there's a lot of mystery as to what happened that day. And I've got him in contact with a number of people who were there, but the honest truth that we know now is we don't know a lot about what happened. What we do know is there were mistakes that were made along the way. And I'm not saying that Tommy Parker made the mistakes, but collectively as a service, we allowed some things to happen that are traditionally or doctrinally not things that we would normally accept. So effectively, complacency allowed this thing to happen. The Swiss cheese model, right? How we allowed this thing to happen and then we were able to find a hole through Swiss cheese. So Corporal Parker's team was on an overt position, an overt hide site, which is kind of an oxymoron. In sniper employment doctrine, in sniper school, as an employment instructor at sniper school, we advocate heavily against using snipers as an overt presence. We do not want a sniper team to be like a sniper's nest or a roost, right? Because they're a high value target in and of themselves, and so therefore they become a very high value target to take out. So as an overt threat, we would prefer as snipers to be employed as a clandestine observation position, not coming out over the top. We're not guard towers on a prison per se. Two, one of the things that happened within the specific scenario was the reoccupation of hide sites. So because of where they were at in Ramadi, because of the way that the command relationship was established, Corporal Parker's team and the other platoon members of 2-4 reoccupied the same overt position over a number of months. So you established a pattern. And so what we did was we had a very high value target, a sniper team, who was occupying a position regularly and on a regular schedule as well. And the trifecta, or the third part of the trifecta, was the building was occupied by local nationals. And they were occupied by local nationals because the first, and this is where it gets a little cloudy, was the first floor was either a market or it was under construction. Now, I'm only speaking as hearsay at this point. I know that Brandon will go into a lot more detail and talking with the members of the platoon who were there. But we know that there were local nationals who were part of the pattern of life of this building itself. And then what we know next is that effectively what happened was an ambush was planned. And local nationals or insurgents themselves, working within the local nationals, were able to get onto the roof where the snipers were at and ambush the 4 snipers, and then kill all of them in the engagement. There's a number of sad portions to this story, but I think that they still have to be told. Corporal Parker's team, we know from the post-mortem analysis that they fought until the very end. Based off of the wound analysis of the Marines themselves, they didn't go down without a fight because that's not what Marines do, right? So we don't ever, stop fighting, and so they didn't give up. But with them, we lost this all of their equipment, their M249, their sniper rifle, their M203, and all of the kit and equipment that come with that, to include our radio systems. It was a huge ordeal for us. But what happens in this instance is that we have this idea of risk, and the commander's responsibility is to always adjudicate or to kind of weigh risk versus reward. And this is the burden that is placed on the commander's head. The problem with snipers and the problem with sniper employment is that our acceptable risk as snipers is often very different than the conventional infantry forces' acceptance of risk. Part of what makes a sniper team successful is their small numbers, is their stealth, right? Their stealth is their security. Their ability to not be seen or not be detected becomes their security. Where the Marine Rifle Squad, of which I was a part of for a long time, their security comes from massive firepower and saying, hey, we're the big guys on the block, we'll fight you in the streets, and that's what we do. The sniper ideology is much different than that, and they're fundamentally built different. So when you have snipers that operate underneath the command guidance of conventional infantry forces, you're seeing a clashing of two tides, two different ideologies on how to solve the same problem. And so the ramifications immediately for Corporal Parker's team being killed was there was a theater-wide kind of mandate on the limit or the mandate of small units and the size of them. So our sniper teams went from 2-man sniper teams in OIF-1 to 4-man sniper teams in and around 2004 to even at points when I was in Afghanistan in saying 2010, the minimum number of people you could leave a patrol base with was 8 to 10 people. Well, this is diametrically opposed to the way that reconnaissance Marines operate, to the way that snipers operate, and clandestine units across the service operate. It's just a different focus. But again, conventional commanders controlling non-conventional forces, and it becomes problematic. So after Corporal Parker was killed in 2004, his rifle went with the people that killed him, and it was circulated through the insurgent population, and eventually ended up in the hands of a person who eventually titled themselves Juba. So here's what I do know, right, is I don't know if Juba was an individual person or not. What I believe in my heart of hearts, right, and this is a belief, not a fact, is that Juba became almost like a group of people who were using like a pen name or a pseudonym, right? If they were all operating underneath a specific flag, many people were operating and then producing videos and saying that they were Juba. During the 2004-2005, what a lot of people call the reawakening, right? The awakening of the insurgency itself inside of the Anbar province, we saw the proliferation of a lot of propaganda, a lot of information operations, specifically from the Mujahideen and the insurgent forces themselves. To them, we were an occupational force, right? The coalitions, the United States was an occupational force, and Mujahideen literally means freedom fighter, right? So right becomes a matter of perspective in a lot of our battles. What they felt that they were doing was trying to liberate us or liberate themselves from our occupation. Technical difficulty. Oh, cool, got it. So, yes, officer. All right. So what they wanted to do was try to be able to promulgate a larger force, to be able to create almost like a jihad, show the effectiveness of how they were attriting and hurting the American forces that were stationed abroad. And part of that was through publicizing a lot of their videos of any kind of IED strikes or sniper kills. And this became extremely prevalent during the 2004-2005 timeframe. So this is where Juba was born. Juba would often start his videos with a call to prayer. And now there's very different types of call to prayers, everyone's kind of recognized. This was a very militant type of call to prayer. So they would not normally have, a call to prayer is actually a beautiful scenario to witness, right? In the mornings in Iraq or in the evenings in Iraq, the call to prayer are absolutely beautiful and really accentuate their culture. This call to prayer that they would start their videos off was very, very different. It would start with the kind of like the neighing of horses, almost like horses going into battle. There was some drum beats behind it, and it was a very, almost like militant kind of, you could feel what they were trying to do with this. And then it would pan over to a man in all black who would wear a face mask, and then he would be professing his belief in the one true God and smiting thy heads of the enemies, which was us, the infidels. And they were trying to elicit a holy war against us. And this was their propaganda. What Juba did was start to show us how he operated. So in 2005, after I graduated sniper school, we were with 3-5 and we were getting ready to go back again, and we were working in the Anbar province, specifically the Sunni Triangle, specifically south of Fallujah. So in the Zaidan district, in Faristown and Amaria. And those were kind of the Wild West for us because the insurgency had kind of picked up and the American or coalition forces couldn't cover a lot of those places. So effectively what they wanted to do is they wanted to send 3-5 out to go hunt the insurgency and kind of root them out. And we knew before we went over, when my sniper team got over to country, we sat in Amaria and we worked with our intelligence assets, our S2 Marines and our intelligence officer prior to going out into the country, is we sat with them and we downloaded every single Juba video that was published. And it was published on Ogrish or Al Jazeera or LiveLeak, any of the non-censored type sites where they would show gruesome footage. And my sniper team, all of us sat down and watched every single video and every single instance of almost over 200 individual sniper attacks on coalition service members. And it wasn't out of some morbid curiosity. It was one of the, and I was explaining today, it was one of the harder things that we had to sit and go through. Because there's something, from a propagandist perspective, right? If you're wanting the enemy to suffer, you're able to watch this. It's filling all the human emotions. You're watching this person go. But from an American perspective, what I'm sitting there doing and what my team was sitting there doing is watching an American's last moments at life. And they don't know it. And you're watching this whole thing happen, and you know what's going to happen to them. And the thing that we had to do as part of our collection was we had to watch every single one of these things. And here's what I tell you, is that one, it was awful to be able to witness all of these killings and all of these injuries that happened for any of the coalition members that got hit. Two, what I saw was the immense amount of heroism, of brotherhood, of sisterhood that we saw. A Marine or a soldier would go down from a well-aimed shot to the high thoracic cavity, generally the neck or the head, immediate incapacitation, and they would fall to the ground. And and to a man and to a woman, every single time a service member would rush into the zone to render aid, and try to remove that person from that scenario itself, even if they were already dead. And watching the chaos ensue, and watching the almost emotion that happened after one of these Marines or soldiers was hit was heartbreaking. Because there's an old sniper saying, and it started in around Vietnam time frame, and I think Marine snipers kind of coined it, was you kill one, you terrorize 1,000. Not often do we get to be on the receiving end of that, of where we got one killed and the rest were terrorized. The frustration, the fear, the anger, like everything that percolated up as one of their own was simply just taken off of, this earth right in front of them, and there was nothing that they could do because the video would remain in place for a long time on certain videos to watch what happened afterwards. And so imagine these young Americans watching as their turret gunner was there 1 minute, not there anymore, and then they have to now assume the position where they were at to take that, knowing that the last person just got killed. Harrowing stuff to be able to watch these young Americans go through, and something that really what really kind of motivated us to be able to find a solution to this problem. But here's why we watch the videos, is because, ironically enough, Juba's hubris is the thing that brought him down. Because inside of these videos, there's information. Just like anything when adversarial nations are collecting on us nowadays, right, and anything that we give away freely is a collection asset for somebody else, right? Social media is a big example of this thing with data mining and all this kind of information. He told us who he was. Here are some of the things that we learned when watching these Juba videos. One, he was generally within 100 to 150 meters of his target. Now, there's 3 potential reasons why he was so close. 1, he wasn't a very good shot. 2, he had a weapon system that wasn't essentially very accurate. Or 3, he was limited by the camera in which he was using at the time frame. So he had to maintain a certain level of proximity to his target. Excuse me. The second thing we noticed was his proximity and his understanding of the relationship to the local populace. The local populace, in all of the videos, you would see the video running and you would see the local populace walking through and not noticing the video camera. So that left us 2 options. Either 1, the entirety of the local populace was in cahoots with Juba, right? And they knew that this was a collective hide site, right? And that they all knew what was going to happen. Or 2, he was blending in with the local populace and effectively hiding from them as well. So we assumed it was the latter, because what had happened was after the report from the rifle would normally happen in the video, the populace would start to go frantic as well. So the American service members are dealing with a casualty at hand, and the local populace, generally in a market or a crowded area, is running and screaming and crossing the video cameras, their field of view. So we thought it was the latter, that he was hiding in and amongst the civilian population themselves. And then what we noticed was interesting was after every single one of these engagements, the camera would stay for a little while and then would move away from the incident at a high rate of speed without bouncing. And this meant something to us. So if I were to take that camera in the back of the room and put that camera on my shoulder and I were to walk with it, there's a natural, ebb and flow to my walk. I'm up and down, up and down, up and down. Right? We didn't, at the time in 2006 and 2005, we didn't have super gyroscopic stabilized, GoPros, right? We had Sony Handycams is kind of what we were, and like click cameras, right? As we kind of went through. So that, while it didn't confirm anything for us, it was interesting to us. So we knew that he would move away at a high rate of speed from a lower angle, because when the people were crossing in front of the camera, they were normally crossing in and around mid-body, like hip level height. And then it would move away from like almost 10 to 15 to start speeding up. And we're like, okay, this guy's in a car. He's telling us right now that he's inside of a vehicle because he's moving away from the scenario at the specific pace. So he told us 3 things, right? He had to get close, he had to do it in a crowded environment where the population wasn't aware of his surroundings, and he had to move away from the position as fast as possible while trying to maintain a level of security and secrecy. So we knew those instances going in. So we are working down in, any questions so far? Anything that I've, any clarification on so far? All right. So around May of, April, May of 2006, our battalion gets a call that we're moving our area of operation. We're moving away from the Zidon, and we're moving into between, and I'll draw on this whiteboard here, in between, we're moving to a place called Camp Habaniya, and our battalion will locate at Camp Habaniya. And Camp Habaniya was an old Iraqi military base, and kind of how it worked. Some of the historians will probably pick this one apart because I'm going off of memory at this point. But effectively what we had was on one side we had Ramadi, and then over here, not to scale, we had Fallujah. And then in between here we had Route Michigan, MSR Michigan. And this is extremely important for us because this is how we're able to connect both of these. In addition to Camp Fallujah, we had TQ here, which is a huge air base for us. And then up here, we had Habbaniyah. So those are kind of the coalition footprint in and around. And if anyone was serving in the area around, I think that I'm kind of accurate on that one. Okay, great, awesome. All right, I'm not totally full of crap, great. All right, so that's kind of how this thing looked. So here's how the battle lines were effectively drawn. The Army owned, at this time frame, everything here and to our west, right? So they owned from basically the battle space of Ramadi was owned by the Army itself, and then what we did was the Marine Corps picked up all the way to Camp Fallujah. At the time, there was a National Guard unit that was in this specific location that was out of Camp Habbaniyah that we were relieving. Well, the National Guard unit had been beaten up pretty bad. They had a number of IED strikes, a number of casualties, and when we first checked into the unit, what we did was, like any good sniper does, is we go to the intelligence cell. We went to their talk, right? And we talked with their intel analysts, their intel officers, and we got ours to do the same. And we got a data dump. And we sat there and just went and interviewed with them. And what we did was they had a map. Just like in a lot of our COCs, they had a map of a whole bunch of incidents. And in the incidents, they had little push pins, color-coded push pins. And they had a series of color-coded push pins that were colored red. And we remember asking them specifically, what are the red ones? And they said, those are sniper attacks. And there was a lot of sniper attacks. And so we started to pull in, each one of the sniper attacks had an incident report. And the incident reports we just read, right? So I think there's this idea of what people believe, like the movies talk about what snipers do is like, like this Tom Berenger, right? Crawling around and eating bugs and stuff like that. Really what it is a blank check to be a free thinker, right? Is to solve a problem that we don't know how to solve. That's the ideology, that's the mentality that we teach our young snipers is we don't know how to solve this problem, but we're gonna figure it out. So to go through it and to try to take every problem by being curious, right? And saying, how would I do this? So we go through our intelligence summaries and we find some things out. One of the instances was specific to this National Guard unit. What they did was there was a sniper incident where the sun was setting, they were on a static position, and there was camionetting and sandbags around this position. So they were very much firm, and they put the camionetting up as a deterrent for snipers, so they couldn't see into that. That would just, sure, that was their method, right? What happened was, as the sun was setting, one of the soldiers' NVGs fell out of the position, right? And so what he did was he reached his hand out from underneath the camionet to grab his NVGs, and at that moment, his hand was blown off by a single well-placed shot, right? And that was one of the intelligence summaries. Into the sun, right? As the sun was setting from a location where they didn't know where it came from. Okay, well, now when they're telling us, like these guys they were like, oh, basically when we showed up, like, thank God the Marines are here. Guys, we have like this sniper. And we're like, all right, sounds great. So we don't know, we're kind of figuring these things out. They were absolutely petrified. Kill one, you terrorize 1,000. This unit was terrorized and became effectively, as they got closer to their redeployment back to the United States, became increasingly, I would say, like they eventually stopped leaving the base. And so what they did, and why 5th Marines was sent in, was because they were stationed at Habbaniyah and they stopped leaving the base, which meant all of this was left open to the insurgency. And we had a series. I was talking with Len Coleman, the company commander for India Company 3-5 just yesterday, and we were kind of reminiscing, and he's like, yeah, well, we had to go into Habbaniyah. We had to go and establish a presence because there wasn't a presence. Not knocking on anybody, right? But when you have a number of casualties as they're getting ready to leave, there is a natural human aspect as a commander saying, I don't want to sacrifice any more of my people before I go back home. I understand that. I don't agree with it, but I understand it because I think that there's a larger picture in play. So one of the other instances that we found was at an intersection in and around on MSR Michigan. There was a Marine fatality very early on, and it was a Marine sitting in the top of a turret, and there was a pretty quick fatality. So here's what our sniper platoon did, right? Is we started doing what we call a red cell analysis. And a red cell analysis is something we teach in sniper school, and effectively what that does is we just turn the map around, is the term that we colloquially use. How would I kill American service members, right? So we talked to the battalion commander, the operations officer, and the company commander and said, we're gonna go out, we're going to go play CSI, right? And we're going to figure out how we would kill American service members. Because the way that we do that is now that's allowed to, we can bolster our defenses when I'm able to find the weaknesses. So on one of the fatalities that we saw, we were able to determine, we basically sat in the middle of the night, and it's the middle of summer, so our team gets there, and I remember standing with our team in the middle of the intersection where this Marine had been killed, and we're looking around. Myself and the adjacent team leader, Sergeant Jimmy Proudman, are looking around going, how would I do this? Where would I do this from? And we start looking around, and then we take our sniper team and we say, okay, I think that building, that would be a good opportunity for us. That has a good advantage point. It's a number of houses back from the street. It's not right over the top. Let's go take a look. So we go, and this happens over the series of number of nights that we are continuing to do this. We go into one house that is off of one of the streets, or offset from one of the streets, and we go inside and we go to the roof. So again, the Marine Corps Museum, okay, I am biased, but is my absolute favorite museum in the world because of the detail, because of there is no stone left unturned. When I walk through, as a veteran of that conflict, when I walk through the OAF and the OEF, I feel as if I'm there. Almost to like a negative point, right? Where it's like, all right, guys, you nailed it. You have like, I was talking the other day with an Iraqi interpreter that we had from OIF-1, and we were talking about the packs of cigarettes that you guys have on the ground there, and we were all laughing like, oh my God, are you serious, right? The level of detail that you go through is incredible, and we appreciate it. And what you'll recognize from the rooftop sniper position that you have here is that is very commonplace for how the Iraqi population lived inside of the summertime in Iraq specifically. So what we did is we went to the top of this roof, and on the top of the roof we found a spider hole, very similar to the spider hole that you have that the snipers are looking through. It's a little 6-inch hole that was about 6 inches off the ground, maybe a foot off the ground. And then what we look behind that is about 3 feet back from that spider hole, this little hole in the wall. I was explaining earlier, you guys like a New York cabbie, you know how they have like the little seat cushion, but they're like beads, like the little brown beads? There was a mat laid 3 feet behind this spider hole. And we're looking at it going, okay, well, we found the shooting position. And this is interesting because now we look down, we look through it, and it is directly looking at where the Marine fatality happened. So this person is offset from the street. He's not like right over the top of the street. He's offset a couple of houses. He's in a clandestine position, and he was waiting for this person. And what did the Marines do is we occupied this position, this mobile patrol base over and over and over again. So we set a pattern for him to exploit. It's just a natural human phenomenon. Here's one of the other things that where we knew we were dealing with a professional, sort of. We knew we were dealing with somebody who had a professional weapons system. Right next to that mat, I found what snipers call a target indicator. And a target indicator is described as anything a sniper does or fails to do that reveals his presence, his equipment, or his location to the enemy. Right next to the mat, he left 2 casings from a 7.62 weapon system. And when I picked up the casings and we looked at the back of the casings said LC on the back, which meant Lake City, right? So now we knew it was Lake City ammunition. One of the things that, and I couldn't determine at that time frame, I'm sure if I look back on it, we could find out whether or not he was shooting Lake City long range or Lake City machine gun. Our 7.62 or M40s are chambered that in a pinch, they are able to shoot D-linked machine gun ammunition, obviously to less accuracy, but if he's shooting 100 to 150 yards, the accuracy of that weapon system is relatively negligible, right, within the minute of angle. So he can shoot D-linked machine gun ammunition. But he gave it away that we knew right then and there was an American service rifle that was hurting Americans in this specific location. So the race was on to try to find this person, whoever that was. Okay, so now we'll get into some of the picture stuff here, because we are Marines, right? You know, we like pictures. Right, so we'll jump into this and kind of the story of how this thing kind of unfolded. Everyone, any questions so far? Okay, so part of our piece, now I'm going to go macro to micro, so we'll still have Ramadi on this end, right? So the Ramadi here, and then what we call here was the 5.5 Easting. That's very important for us, right? And then we have MSR Michigan did this kind of number here, and then off into that direction. So what we did was when we established our footprint, the Marine Corps footprint, we established 3 patrol bases in and around MSR Michigan. So Habbaniyah is now here, right? TQ is over here, and Fallujah is like way over there, right? So then what we did was on MSR Michigan, we established something called OP Falcons, OP Bears, and then OP Cubs. I had Len Coleman, the company commander, was a Chicago native, so he gets to name these OPs, so naturally he made them Chicago-based, and then somebody else snuck in an Atlanta reference in there. So what you're looking at on this picture here is OP Falcons. So OP Falcons looked kind of like this, and I know that it's trying to be as best as possible with it, so I'll draw it up here. So OP Falcons, as now what we have is MSR Michigan's running along this way. OP Falcons is kind of on a hill, kind of in and around here, right? So OP Falcons is placed up here, but you have a built-up area in and around this location. OP Falcons is an unfinished house that effectively they'd started, you can see that they'd started, they had got the foundation in, and then, I don't know, maybe they ran out of money, I don't know, or the war kicked off and they just didn't never finish it. So the Marine Infantry moved in, India Company moved in, and we were India Company snipers, so we moved in with them. That is my teammate there, Brett Stidful, and that's just where we lived and where we slept for a number of months in that specific location. So now OP Falcons became very important for us because it was our westernmost footprint between between 3-5 and first of the 50, I think it's first of the 509th going into Ramadi. And so between here and here, there was no American footprint other than our presence patrols that we would do. And so outside of Falcons, there was nothing permanent. So OP Falcons, we set up this really cool position. Snipers were there, mortars were there, the infantry was there. We were fantastic. Here's what some of the things that OP Falcons, this is myself at OP Falcons. You can see that we've set up kind of a hide site here. Again, it was the summer, so please forgive not wearing a blouse. But you'll see that we have cami netting, we have our painted rifles, I have my range card, and then in the next picture, you'll be able to see a spider hole that we set up. And so what this did was this spider hole was we had this set up on multiple positions within the building. So the infantry would be on the top of the roofs with their heavy machine guns, the snipers would be down below with their long guns. And this one is me looking from OP Falcons here, looking down this direction to the west. We also had another position aiming to the east and kind of looking in that specific direction. And so that's all we could really see. So we would sit there for hours a day, apparently taking a lot of photos of each other. And you can see we're using the M40A3 at the time. So the M40A3 was an internal box magazine. The M40A5 was an external magazine. So we had to be able, I had to keep ammunition with me so it was shoot to, load to. After that, we moved to an external magazine where I just put almost like magazine-fed M4 type variant. Schmidt & Bender scope, super cool bandana, unauthorized, right? But whatever, it was trying to be cool as hell, right? All right, so here is to give you a picture of OP Falcon. Now, this is by a friend of mine, Ray Leal, who was an infantry Marine, who was a professional photographer. So we have a myriad of things. So here is the scenario that I wanted to show you that depicts what life was like for us at OP Falcons and the constant contact that we were in. This is, I'm telling the time frame because we're using 46s, right? So this is 06 before we started to sundown them in kind of 08 time frame. This is a medevac, right? And so he has this whole scenario of right behind. So now OP Falcons is on a hill. This medevac is happening right here, right? So something happens, and I'll explain it to you in just a, well, I'll explain it to you right now. It's my show, I get to decide. All right, so what we have is OP Falcons, and this is in and around the first week of June of 2006. So we'll notice that, so this is all built up area that we have inside of OP Falcons, right? Get a better, clearer picture for you. OP Falcons on a hill, built up area, MSR, Michigan, high traffic area. So there's two things that happen from here. One, this distance between here to here is around 900 meters, right? So it's a pretty far movement for us and a pretty far shot for us. On the first week of June, I actually got in a lot of trouble. What happened was right here from this spider hole, right, not the badass bandana picture, right, but the spider hole right there, the infantry Marines who were up on watch saw somebody emplacing an IED on MSR Michigan. The cool part about MSR Michigan was it was raised up, right? So there was waddies on effectively like both sides, and then it was like this elevated thing. which was great for us because if you wanted to go lay an ID on this thing, you had to come out into the public, right? So we saw some people doing this, and then what we did was okay. So I'm going to tell you an embarrassing story. So I don't really tell very good war stories. I tell stories of where I've like totally screwed up. So enjoy. So one of the most embarrassing moments of my life was going through this. We're in this spider hole, and they see these guys, right? The company commander's there. It's like this perfect, he's the decision authority. And they're like, snipers, we got people putting in IEDs, right? And so I have an entire platoon of infantry Marines behind me, right? And then the Captain Coleman is like, Pasciuti, you're good, take the shot. Like they've hit all of our ROEs. And so now the crowd goes quiet. And because like everybody really we loved India Company, and I was an India Company Marine, so they want us to see us doing good and doing good things for them because their weapon systems couldn't reach that. So they're like, snipers, you got it, right? So we get there, and I'm like doing the windage, and I'm doing all the things, and the Carlos half-cock kind of Chuck Mahaney thing. The shot's 900 meters, okay? So you guys can kind of see where this is going, right? So it's a really far shot, and they're on an elevated main supply route. So it's a very hard shot to make. Right? I'll give myself some credit on this one. So we have this ID team dead to rights, right? Ready to go. We get the call. Everything's great. The crowd hushes while we're snipers ready to take the shot. I rip this shot off, and I have never hunted anything. I've never hunted a mammal that has. I've never hunted a mammal outside of a mammal on two legs. So I'm from San Francisco. I didn't grow up hunting, right? But what was described to me is what happens was when you miss a deer, they kind of stop, right? So it did that. So I shot over this dude's head, right? The round snaps over him, and he goes like this, and the entire platoon goes, ah, right? So I have 40 grunts who are like, oh my, and I've like let myself down, I've let them all down, like, scarlet letter. So it was one of the more embarrassing moments, and this is happening in a flash of a moment, a flash of a couple seconds. At that point, we have another sniper get up on a gun as well, and he's able to prop up in a window. And so then what we do is we do what's called frame shooting. And frame shooting we got from the Israelis, and frame shooting is effectively this. So what we do is we have this is an echo silhouette or a man-sized target, right? Frame shooting is if you do not know the distance, if you cannot gauge the distance of your target, what you do is you have multiple weapon systems pick multiple different places to hold on the target. So what we did was we had two guns now, so one gun held here and one gun held here. Well, that's how you do frame shooting for elevation or for distance. Frame shooting also works when you can't figure out windage. And the same thing happens. You can have one gun hold here and one gun hold here. And so now what you're doing is you're sending down multiple rounds in different trajectories on different locations to provide you kind of hedge your bets. And so what you can also do when you're frame shooting is if you don't know the windage, it's not very easy at the windage, and you don't know the elevation or the distance, you can do this. You can aim one at the hip and then one at the shoulders. And that's what we did. So we got immediately up, the next gun got up, and we said, all right, hey, we're going to do frame shooting. I'm holding right shoulder, you hold left hip. And we sent the rounds forward. We hit our target. The target fell. The entire platoon erupts, and they all went over to congratulate the other sniper for his very good shot. And everyone was like, I said, like, no one can ever confirm or deny who actually hit him on the second shot, but everyone immediately went over to the other guy and was like, oh, great shot. Yeah, Pasciuti missed over here, right, kind of thing. And I never lived that down for at least another week, right? So where we got in trouble was immediately following where the insurgent fell, is a few moments later, a vehicle drove up to it. Now, the Geneva Convention, we have to very much follow our ROEs. Inside of the ROEs, what I made the decision, right, at the time was a vehicle came up and started to grab the insurgent on the ground and to put him into the vehicle and has like a getaway driver. To me, I associated that as an ambulance and I wasn't going to touch that. But according to our Geneva Convention, right, it has to be marked, right? A red crescent, a red cross. This was, as I was scolded by the battalion commander a couple of days later, when he came out to congratulate the other sniper on his kill, I told him how we didn't shoot that. And he said, if they touch any portion of this person during a firefight, they are a combatant, right? And you will engage them. Roger that, sir, understood. Now that plays a key important feature into the next portion of the story. All right, so now you can see that's what OP Falcons kind of looks like. But right here, here's a problem. OP Falcons has about 500 meters of dead space directly in front of it. And dead space is anything that I can't cover with direct fire or direct observation. And that's just based on the way that the scenarios developed here and where we're laid in. So what happens is now the second week of June, earlier on, as a vehicle is driving out, so here's the 5-5 Easting. What we normally did at the 5-5 Easting was we put an M1A1, we put a tank, or we put a track out on, oh man, I've been retired for 3 weeks and I forget the armor ops term and graphic. Never mind, I'm not going to attempt it. But it's on video, I don't want to embarrass myself publicly. All right, already told you how I missed a shot, right? But anyways, a tank, right? So here we go, I'll draw a little tank for you. There you go. So there is a track. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, thank you. Right? There we go. Right. So there's a lot of metal sitting on the fire. That's how we kind of like had our battle line drawn. That's how we covered that. It was either an AAV or a tank that was there. So here's what happened. Early in the morning, a track is coming out to be able to do a relief in place. They're coming along MSR Michigan, and then right here, they strike an IED, and they're in our dead space, and we are pissed, right? I'm an insurance policy. I'm a sniper to an infantry battalion, right? What I do is I tell the battalion commander, I'm going to protect your men and women that go forward. And we failed because they exploited our dead space. Remember, the insurgency is an extremely smart and extremely nimble organization. And then what happened was interesting to us. Then what happened, when this track got blown up, no severe casualties. I'll show you some pictures here in a second. This track left the 5-5 Easting to come over here and to render aid for the medevac, to get them off the X. And then they moved them over to OP Falcons, where our helos were coming in. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. So here's the next picture. Wait, one more moment. There we go, badass bandana. All right, so here's the 46 coming in. And then here's a series of photographs that Ray Leal took. And he's also provided all of these photographs to the museum itself. So these are from him. This is A.J. Barth. This is our sniper platoon corpsman rendering aid. You see the blood from the Marine here. He survived. He didn't have any catastrophic injuries, but he was injured pretty heavily. So you have both of our corpsmen working on him here, stabilizing him in this specific position. And then you have the full story of the medevac happening. So you have this bird landing. Here's the corpsman coming off of the bird, running in his flurry to get to the Marines, rendering him out, aid forward now, moving him towards the medevac location. And you can see we're kind of in some weird Vietnam-looking kind of like garb, right, with no shirts or whatever. We lived in kind of our underwear there because it was so hot and we didn't have any running water. And then them carrying him to the 46 and then, providing this opportunity to move them out. And then the bird taking off from there. So that whole expose of photographs is from this location specifically here. And so here's what happened. During that time frame, that whole thing took about 45 minutes. From boom to react to bird coming in and out, everything all said and done. So the time the track comes back to this location was about 45 minutes. What do you think happened when that track came back to that location 45 minutes later? He hits an IED, right? So, okay, now we got a problem. So now this track comes in and gets blown up. Again, no serious casualties. But what happened was the enemy exploited a gap. We created a gap in coverage and the enemy found a way to attrit us, and they did. So we were pissed, right? Jimmy Proudman, the other team leader from Banshee 2, I was Banshee 4, we were pissed. We talked with Captain Coleman and we developed a mission. I was tired of seeing Marines and soldiers hurt, right? And we wanted to be able to say, how are we going to hunt these pieces? Because part of the problem for the OEF kind of vets was what we did was a lot of times we manned static positions and then went on security patrols and often were reactive. The only offensive organization within the infantry battalions was often the snipers. The only way that we could go affect the enemy rather than a contact patrol was snipers themselves. So we developed a mission to go help this thing out. So what we devised was a mission that looked I'll continue to use this, right? So we have, fine, OP Falcons is here. So this is the mission that we devised. We were going to take 2 sniper teams with four men in each sniper team and then 4 additional squad members from Kilo Company 3-5. What we did was we went from OP Falcons, and in the night, we patrolled over to in and around the 5-5 Easting, our western edge of our battle space. And the mission was this. We briefed it to the battalion commander, we briefed it to the company commander. We were going to set a trap. And the idea was to set a trap for both IED emplacers and potential snipers in the area. But the idea was like, again, I'm from San Francisco. I'm not a hunter nor a fisherman, right? But I understand that the worm on the hook gets eaten. So never would we ever use Marines as bait. That was never our intention. What we wanted to use was the absence of Marines as bait. We wanted to recreate that scenario about a week later of where there was a potential gap. So here's how you use snipers in a doctrinal employment characteristic. They can cover gaps in the infantry. So what we do is between friendly lines, you put snipers in there and they cover that gap. And so you can make a gap or you can have a gap that's created by natural instances and the snipers cover that. But we don't do it overtly, we do it clandestinely. And so that's what we did. So from this position, as we go through here, any questions kind of while I'm going through? Okay, so now what I'll do is I'll put the 5, okay, I won't use that one. Something's never changed in the Marine Corps, right? All right, so now we've kind of got like our 5-5 Easting here, right? And then from here, we've got Ramadi still over this direction, and then our road kind of bends like that. OP Falcons is now over here. So what we do is we move into some houses, and we're back off the street. There's some houses in and around here. So myself and Jimmy Proudman from Banshee 2, we develop a mission that what we're going to do is my sniper team is going to cover from here, one gun looking that way, one gun looking this way, down MSR Michigan. Now, our guns can only reach 1,000 meters, but our observation capabilities are around 2 clicks. So I'm covering 2 clicks in this direction. Now, Jimmy Proudman is doing the same thing. So he's effectively over here, and he's looking here, and then has another gun looking that direction. Kind of makes sense? So we have this really wide fan. And then the plan was this, was to move in under the cover of darkness, set up our positions, and then at 07, when the mission was supposed to begin, that the tracks would then leave the area as if they were responding to another casualty or another medical emergency, and then leave the place vacant. And that's exactly what they did. So Jimmy's team set in here on the west, I set in on the east, and at 07 that morning, the tracks split and the trap was now set. So here is what I will never hear the end of this. AJ Barth, right? He looks like me. He's a day older than I am, and we both have the same name. We're both in the sniper platoon. He was one of my closest friends at the time, right? And he was in my team. He was our corpsman in my team. And he's never going to forget, AJ, I'm sorry. He's never going to forgive me for telling this portion of the story. So what happens is we're in our hide site, and this is what my hide site looks like. So snipers, a lot like the Marine Corps, are constantly having to justify their existence, because just like the service is to the larger DoD force, the DoD says, I want your money, I want your personnel, you don't need to exist, you're duplicative, right? And the Marine Corps is like, no, we're valuable, we are worthy. Snipers are exactly the same way. So the random occurrence that I have so many pictures from this instance is because I'm trying to justify to our higher headquarters that we are in fact doing good out here and not taking pictures wearing bandanas. So I'm on my own IO campaign at the same time, right? Okay, so this is what my hide site looks like. Not very, spectacular, right? But here's what we do is this, so I have my sand sock, I have a screen in front of us, right, that I'll show you in just a second. And then what we use is, I used kind of like a doily or a piece that they have. What you want to do is be able to provide many different layers of screens on your weapon systems, in front of your weapon systems, to be able to provide enough plausible deniability that anything's kind of going on inside of them. And then I use my sand sock here, and then this is, as the room is set up, this is inside of the house, is kind of as the house is looking out, is here. This is this weird bedroom window that's looking out basically right here. So I'm looking straight this direction as you are seeing from here. And so inside of the room, there's a bed right here, and there's a nightstand, and then the exit to the room, the rest of the house is right there. So we're on the second floor. Us and the squad take it over the night before. There's a family in the home, and we're always very, very good with the family. So the squad took care of the family, put them into a room, kept them fed, kept them, as happy as I would say, as content as they could be with coalition forces kicking their door in the night before, or silently kicking their door in and taking over their home. So we wanted to take care of them. So I set up in that position, and then you see Brett Stidful. Here's what I could see. Here's another image of, there's an actual screen window here, and it's just cracked just a little bit, and then I have what's called a foreground cover. So that's just the doily on top of the weapon system itself, and then you're seeing what I can see kind of down there. And then again, another image of what we're able to kind of see. And you're seeing, now again, here's a better view of what I'm able to see in the street. This is literally from that hide site. And all of these pictures I'll be able to give to the museum. You can have them, whatever you need to do. So this place is extremely important because that's where everything happens. So you'll see there's reeds. This is about 187, 175 meters away. Not a very hard shot, but very much what we're kind of watching through this kind of procedure. So here's where the story, AJ is going to be pissed at me, right? So we go in, it's 07, the mission starts, and I see some sailors in the audience, right? Our corpsmen are, they're kind of like our team moms. They're always looking out after us, right? And so like, they're always taking, and so Doc Barth was no different, right? So at 07, everything's set up, and he's like, AJ, I need you to go on your rest plan. I need you to go down. And so we often go on our rest plan. He's like, you're tired, nothing's gonna go on, right, between 7 and 9 a.m. It just started, right? He's like, go on your rest plan. And I'm like, all right, cool, I appreciate it. So everything's set up. I go to lay down for 1 hour. And here's where it gets tricky, is we were doing 1 hour on, 1 hour off. We had 2 men on this gun, and then Brett Stidful's gun is here in the other room looking out this direction. He's covering here. So this is what Brett Stidful can see, right? So he is now looking east down MSR Michigan. There's Brett Stidful looking. So again, you'll see the forward covering of his gun. There's a scope, and he's on this place, and he just sits there, and he's observing, and he's ready to attack should he need to. Okay, so that's his position. You see the binoculars for Brett Stidful. We're just using like one of their cabinets itself. Okay, so now I go down and I go to sleep. I try to go to sleep at 7 a.m. It's already 100 degrees, right? And so I lay down. And here's Doc Barth's fatal flaw. Is we're supposed to do 1 hour on, 1 hour off, but he is feeling pretty good. So what he does is he lets me sleep an additional hour. And this changes fate for us, because what happens is when we're doing hour on, hour off, I would be sleeping from 07 to 08. I would be on from 08 to 09. Most of us don't sleep during the day anyways because it's too hot. But what happens is he wakes me up at 09 and he says, hey man, I did 2 hours. I was feeling good. You're up on the gun. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, sounds great. And he says, God, he's never gonna forgive me. He's like, I'm gonna go use the bathroom. And he says, don't kill anyone while I'm gone, right? Famous last words, right? So he leaves, and now I'm in the room by myself. It's 09. Remember, the order has now switched. And at that moment, what happens is a man by the name of Kyle Burton, squad leader, Sergeant Kyle Burton for 3-5, just retired as Sergeant Major Burton. He rolls up on MSR Michigan, much to my chagrin, and parks right here in front of my house, right? Basically at the 5-5 Easting. And I was like, yo, and I know Kyle and I came up together, right, and I'm like, I reach over, hey, Red 1, this is Banshee 4, just to let you know, we have a mission going on right here. I'm kind of like, hey, get out of here. And he's like, yep, roger that, I understand. He was trying to help with it, and it was fantastic that he was, because he says, I wanted to make it look as normal as possible, so we're running a patrol up here. We're going to let our vehicle cool down, because at the edge of their patrol, we said, we'll be out of your hair in 10 minutes. And it's like 9:10 at this moment. So Doc Barth is still doing his thing, right, downstairs, and I'm by myself hanging out here, and I have, very little water in my position. I'm just sitting where I'm at watching, and I can hear the rumble of the engine. And so how this position looks from here is, now I'm in this position, MSR Michigan is here, and I have a few houses in between this area. The track parks kind of right here. I'm not going to try to draw that again, but that's what a track looks like, right? And he's facing that direction, right? And so I can just see, the only thing visible to me is the very forward turret, just the TC hatch, right? And the gunner's turret itself. And so I'm like, all right, sounds good, no problem. 10 minutes, I'm hearing the engine idle, bum, 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 kind of going through. And so I get back on my observation, right? I just take it over my post, right? Everything's good, right? And so now I'm doing what we call a 50-meter overlapping strip search. This is a sniper observation technique that we use to cover a specific area. So, as I was explaining this morning, is traditionally in Western cultures, we read left to right. So the 50-meter overlapping strip search is built and designed for us to go from right to left. Because what we do is we don't actually read the words that we're looking at. We see them and they're photographic memories. And so like the word the, I don't have to read THE. I just see that it says the and I move on to the next. So our brain fills in gaps. When we're looking to observe, we want to go the opposite direction because I don't want my brain to fill in gaps. We're inherently lazy, right? So our brains are inherently lazy trying to be and save calories. So we wanted to go from right to left. So what I do on my 50-meter overlapping strip search is I take 50 meters in depth of land inside of my observation, and I start going from right to left, up, 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 and I'm looking. You're like, you play the alphabet game, you're like, I find something that starts with an A, and I find a B, or whatever, and you just start moving. Anything to keep your mind occupied while you're staring into nothing. Because, in the movies, they're like, everyone knows something's gonna happen. That's not how it really works, right? So then I take 50-meter increments as we're going through. I get through my third instance of my 50-meter increments, and now there's a car parked where this person is. He has already pulled in. I've already watched a car pull in. It's a normal pattern of life thing that happens. It's 9 a.m. The markets are starting to open. The chai shop is right over here starting to open up. Everything's starting to go as normal. So what happens is the car is parked there and I'm cruising across. And as I cruise across, forgive me again in my wonderful diagrams. Okay, so the house is here. MSR Michigan is now here. We have the Wadi on both sides, and now we have the kind of the market itself is here, and then the tea shop is kind of over here. And so it's like a auto repair. It's a normal like strip mall in Iraq kind of thing, right? And so this is my area of observation that I can really see. It was kind of in here. So here's where the car parks. The car is kind of parked like this, where I can kind of see into the car. It's a little more, it's a little more bladed than that. Sorry, it's like kind of like that, where I can see just the back right corner of the car. The front end of the car is here, and the tail end is here. And in this car, as I'm going across, I catch a glare as I'm able to move across. Something catches the sun, and it glares, and it piques my interest. Well, at that time frame, you see we had the Schmidt-Bender scope. It was the first time we had those scopes, variable power optic. So I took the optic and I zoomed in, and what did I see but a Sony Handycam? And so if you'll see on like a normal car, you have, your car was facing like this, you have, your front windshield, or your front window is here, your rear window is here, and then on the back of the car, there's the trunk right here. You have that weird triangle kind of window on a normal sedan. Does that, you know what I'm talking about? That kind of like, it's just like a weird triangle in the back. So the Sony Handycam was what's that? Yes, actually, that's exactly, so you're right. So A pillar, B pillar, C pillar back here. So the C pillar window, there is a camera propped up right here, and it's a Sony Handycam. And from my advantage, my vantage point, I can see that the window for the Sony Handycam is open. We use Sony Handycams for a lot of our intelligence stuff, and I know exactly what it is. And I see the window open, and I freak out, right? So I see this thing because now immediately what I'm thinking is I'm thinking IED, right? They're filming it. They're about to blow this track up that just showed up. Oh my God, I missed my sniper shot the week before. I'm the worst sniper in the world. These guys are about to blow up. I'm really a narcissist in this whole thing. No, I'm just like, no, I'm just messing. So this thing, yeah. So everything starts to unfold and I'm freaking out. Red one, Banshee 4, button up, you're about to get hit. I see Kyle Burton in the TC hatch look left, look right, and slam the hatch shut, and nothing really happens at that point. So now, because the kind of situation's a little averted, right? So then what happens is, now I'm in my position. The most valuable tool in a sniper's arsenal is not his sniper rifle, it is his handset to his radio. I am still on a mission where I'm hunting people and I don't want to give away my position. So I start trying to work a fire mission. I'm trying to pull, first thing I try to do is pull cobras, right? Cobras are floating around. They're usually out of TQ. Their guys are cruising, right? And they're hungry. They want to eat. So I want to give them something to eat. I can't find any cobras on my net, right? I can't pick them up. So now, remember, Captain Coleman is at OP Falcons over here. The company commander and the battle space owner is at OP Falcons. And so I'm on company TAC on VHF, and he's listening, right? It piques his interest as soon as they identify, hey, Red One, something's about to happen. They grab him. Now he's full on, ready to go. Fantastic company commander. So Cobras can't work. I can't find them. So then what I want to do is I want to source artillery. TQ, way over here, has artillery. I have the Leica vector rangefinder with an 8-digit grid, like all this stuff. I'm like, yep, pull an 8-digit grid. Let's blow this thing out of the sky or out of the ground, right? Let's hit it. I start running up a fire mission. View, this is me, adjust fire grid. It's going up through the chain of command. On the larger map that I haven't drawn here, 400 meters to the north is a mosque. And at that time in Iraq, specifically with the ROEs, a mosque has a 500-meter NFA, or no fire area. So it creates a 500-meter ring around that, which means that NFA comes right here. So I can't touch it with fires, right? So I'm trying to source it with Arty. Okay, let's get smaller. OP Falcons, where Captain Coleman's at, 60s. Let's hit it with 60s. Let's get India boys to eat, right? Because remember, we are all in this thing with one another, and we want to be able to have each other in this fight, right? So I try to get 60s involved. Same thing. NFA, can't touch it, right? Crap. All right, what's my next opportunity? And this is happening in the matter of like seconds, right? I'm working through this process. On my extremely amazing drawings of the tracks that I've done for you, you recognize that there's a Mark 19 and a 50 cal on the track. The track is now sitting here. So MSR is sitting here. Right? Oh, yeah, it's like, golly. Oh, man. Any street cred I had is totally gone at this point. Sorry, guys, right? They're like, yeah, please don't bring this guy back. He's terrible, right? So the track is sitting here, and he has a Mark 19 and 50 cal. So I'm trying to get him to work. Mark 19, high explosive, same thing happens. HE, 500 meters near a mosque. I will be completely honest with you. At this time, I have a huge lipper in of what we called formaldehyde, right? It was the international Copenhagen. It's 1,000,000 degrees outside, right? And I have all of the water has been sucked out of my mouth at this point, and I'm trying to get through these radio calls while tension and stress and all this is happening. And then what happens, panicked everybody, is all of a sudden in that rear quarter panel window here can everyone see that? Sorry, in the quarter panel window of the car, the Sony Handycam sitting here, I see a hand come through. Now, remember, is every single window in that car is tinted beyond belief, right? With the exception of this window. And I can see in the window, I can see a Sony Handycam. And in hindsight, what I recognize now was I know now that I saw a buttstock, right? At the time, I didn't know it was a buttstock, right? I saw something in the car, but nothing piqued my interest. I was focused on the camera, right? And I thought IED all the way. And so I see a hand come forward and start messing with the camera. At this point, I had no confirmation that anybody was in the car. I never saw anybody get out of the car. The car just pulled up, right? And in a lapse in judgment, I didn't see what happened. So all of a sudden, I have confirmation. And I'm over the net, and I'm like, red one, there's a hand coming forward. Captain Coleman, bless his heart, he is the quintessential commander. He is listening, emotionally removed from the situation. I have no saliva left in my mouth, right? And I am watching this scenario develop in front of me, and I think I'm about to have Marines killed on my watch. And Captain Coleman has the wherewithal as a commander. He does break protocol a little bit, right? As I'm saying, the hand comes forward, and I'm explaining what we need to do. He says, take the shot. And then I said, Roger, okay, I'm like a math nerd. Roger that, sir, right? Like I'm going to be, so effectively, I'm shooting through a medium, right? I'm shooting through glass, so I can't control what happens to my bullet afterwards. And I, for some reason, feel like I need to explain this to him over the radio. And he yells at me over the net, and he goes, Pasciuti, take the shot. And so we know protocol says that we're not supposed to say each other's names, right? But he snaps me back in. I've already worked with him out of Fallujah. I worked with him here, and he says, Pasciuti, take the shot. Roger that. So what we decide that we're going to do is fall apart. I'm really good under pressure, I promise. I like closing my eyes, like, ah, all right. So what we do is we have the window that kind of looks like this, right? And reminder, it's kind of at an angle. I have the Sony Handycam here, and then that's that window that's open. The hand comes forward. And what I said, and what I decided to do was I was going to take and put a shot about 3 inches above the camera lens itself, because I wanted to break the glass to allow another shot to go through it. Because again, when I'm shooting through a medium, specifically tempered glass, like in a vehicle, the bullet can hit, or the projectile in the technical term can hit, and then it can disintegrate, it can shatter, it can go wherever. I don't have any control. So I need to get this glass out of the way so I can control my own shot. So I clear that, and then I put 2 more rounds right here within what's called a minute of angle, within about an inch of one another. I put that through. And then all hell breaks loose because we have a family in the house below us, right? The neighbors don't know that we're there, right? The family starts freaking out because they are hearing gunshots go off. The neighbors start freaking out because they hear gunshots go off. So a mob starts to form, right? It's like people are coming out, they're really upset. '06 was an interesting time for the Marine Corps in the Anbar province. We weren't exactly everyone's friend at the time. There was a lot of IO campaigns that we were fighting. And so 3 rounds from an M40 series sniper rifle shoot or go off at that time. So now what happens is I get off of the gun. And at that point, Sergeant Kevin Homestead, who is an avid hunter and was trying to tell the city boy the difference between a muley and a whitetail. And I'm like, sounds great, Kevin, right? But he knows what he's doing. And so Doc Barth is still doing his thing, right? Downstairs, right? And so I'm in the room by myself while like hell is coming, undone. So Homestead comes in because he hears the shot, right? And he comes up and rushes in, and now I have to get off the gun because now what I'm trying to do is, remember, I'm still not trying to give away my position as much as possible. I'm trying to get this track across the wadi on this reared bridge thing and get them over here. So, because I still don't know what's happening inside this vehicle. I saw a hand, I put some bullets in it, I'm not confirmed, everything is kind of gray at this moment. And so I'm on my knee on the radio talking with, at this moment, our battalion commander is driving down MSR Michigan. He's like on a combat tour, right? And he's like cruising through, and Captain Cole, like they're getting the react board, like the cavalry is coming. And I'm on my knee kind of explaining everything. What happens is, from the chai shop right here, one of the weirdest experiences of my entire life. Kevin Homestead and I, Kevin's on the gun and I'm on my knee, we're almost like mouth open. We watch this person nonchalantly get up, walk from the Thai shop, finish his tea, right? Walk from the chai shop and walks and beelines it towards the car. We're like, what in the hell is this guy doing, right? But remember what I was told by my battalion commander the week before. As soon as they touch the car, they become a combatant. So now in hindsight, what we understand was this person heard 3 reports from an M40 series sniper rifle, and he knew it was his job to go drive the getaway vehicle. He was working in tandem. He had a partner. This was his spotter. They just had a separation of spotters where the spotter would go take a position and they would have conversations from an alternate location. Ingenious how they did it. This man walks up to the car. Homestead is on the gun. It's 187 meters with a sniper rifle, right? Like that's he's golden. And I said, Kevin, as soon as he touches that car, plug him, right? So now the man comes up to the car and he is bladed to us. And as soon as he touches the car, Kevin shoots him here in the rib cage, and he falls to his knee and he turns towards Kevin and he puts another one in his chest, right? And then what happens is because we're so close, terminal ballistics, I'm sorry to go into details, but terminal ballistics doesn't have that much of an effect when there's that much velocity behind the round. It can't do what the round's designed to do. And so the man doesn't die, right? So then he gets up and moves into the vehicle itself. So as the vehicle is looking towards me, he gets back in this position. Remember, I can see the vehicle this direction. He sits his butt here and then stretches his legs across the center console and on the passenger seat. But I can't see him. All I can see is some movement inside of it, but I don't know what he's doing. And at the same time, I'm bringing a track around. Now the situation's gotten even worse. There's a dude who's shot inside of the vehicle that I have no control over, and Sergeant Burton's squad is about to roll up on this thing. I have no idea what's about to happen. Is it a suicide bomb? Does he have grenades? Does he have machine guns? We don't know. The only thing I can see are his legs. And the only thing I'm trying to do is prevent this man from creating any more havoc. So I shoot him in the knee to prevent him from moving any further. So he is completely stopped there. What happens is then the track rolls up to this position. There's the track, right? Rolls up to this position. Sergeant Burton's guys get out. I'm explaining everything to him. So we're talking. One of the cool relationships that snipers specifically have with an infantry company is I've grown up with them. I've worked with them. So Kyle and I worked together for a number of years at that point. And he knew, and we talked again yesterday, he was like, AJ, I knew we were good. You were over our shoulders, right? So anything that we were going to do, we knew that we were safe. And that was a really good thing for us to know. So I explained to Burton, at that point, the gentleman in the front of the vehicle had expired. He'd passed away from his wounds, but I still didn't know what the status was for this hand that I saw in the back of the car. So I explained to him, the person in the front of the car dies, and then they open up the back end of the vehicle here, and I'm explaining like, hey, inside of this thing, like I don't know what's going on. So they open the vehicle up. I'm watching the whole thing, and they said, yep, there's a dead guy in here. Like, oh, cool, fantastic. What had happened was, as I shot into this window, the sniper was looking through the camera itself. And so he was adjusting the camera. And what, in hindsight, what we understand with an intelligence analysis was his shot went away. When we closed the TC hatch, when Sergeant Burton, who was the target of this sniper, when he buttoned up, his shot went away. He was turning his camera off. And so when I saw his hand come forward, he turned his camera off. And here's one of the cool things. I don't know the classification, and I'm waiting for it to kind of come undone. I'll skip like a Tarantino movie. I'll skip ahead for a second. I got to look at his camera, and I got to look at the video of his camera. Inside of his camera, you can see my hide site. You can see where you can't see us because we're good, right? But you can't see us, but you can see our hide site. It was exactly the opposite of a Juba video. It was him filming a target that he was going to get hit or that he was going to kill, and then a report from our rifle killed him first, right? Unfortunately, he turned his camera off about 15 seconds before he was killed. But the round went in the top of his head as he was looking through it and came out the bottom of his mouth, killed him instantly. And again, I had no confirmation that it was a sniper at that point. I had suspicions, but again, IED is what I was thinking all day. So Sergeant Burton opens up and I walk him towards, I said, hey, back left window, C-pillar, right? As I walk up and said, there's a Sony Handycam. So now imagine I'm Sergeant Burton, right? And you guys are in the sniper position. The car is here. What Sergeant Burton does is he kind of blocks me out. I can't really see what's going on in the car. So I have him hold up the camera. I said, hey, hold it above your Sony Handycam, hold it up. And he shakes it in the air, right? And I'm like, all right, roger that, confirm. And he goes, hey, there's something else in here. And I said, all right. And so now his back is to me. He grabs it out of the vehicle. There's some kind of chaos going on. And he grabs it, and for a flash of a second, before he puts it in the track, I catch the image of a sniper rifle or of a high-powered rifle. And I'm like, hey, what was that? And he goes, it looks like a sniper rifle. And then I said, hold it above your head. And so what he does is he comes around and he holds it above his head. And that's 150, 180 meters away. And I look at it and I go, holy crap. It's an M40 series sniper rifle. And I said, Burton, read me the side of it. What does it say on the side of that rifle? The M40 series, the M40A3 series sniper rifles all start with the serial number Echo 676, right? Or the ones that we had in the West Coast all started with that. The serial numbers for the sniper rifles of the M40 series all started with a similar serial number, Echo 6, right? But generally starting with Echo or November, depending on the time frame. And I said, does it say Remington 700 on the side of it? And he says, yes, it says Remington 700. And he read me an 8-digit serial number that was very similar to the Echo 676, meaning it came from us. And at that moment, we realized that not only was it an American sniper rifle, not only was it a sniper rifle, it was 2-4's sniper rifle. And so we had a moment of like, look, Doc Barth is now back from this, and he is livid, right? He came back in the room and he says, I told you to do one thing, right? Again, he's like team mom, so you don't want to make mom mad, right? He says, I gave you one specific piece of instruction. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude, right? And so we have a moment of levity, and then chaos continues to ensue because now there's more gunfire that we had, right? We had killed another individual, and now there is a mob starting to form in and around the home, and they don't know where we're at. The civilian population, we believe, thinks that we're like executing a family or doing something. I don't know but they weren't happy that we were there. We didn't hurt the family. There was no harm done. We like literally just left the building. So we go to leave the building. We walk out, and as we walk out of the building, a riot is starting to form, right? There's things are kind of going on. We're not safe. We're a small team. The squad is there. They bring the track around, and we go ahead and load up in Sergeant Burton's track. And what Sergeant Burton does is he walks through the track, and he grabs the rifle, and he hands me the rifle and says, "This is yours," right? And so he gives me the sniper rifle. And so what we do, and I'll explain some of the lore between what a pig and a hog, right? So what a hog is a hunter of gunmen. And when you graduate sniper school, on the West Coast, we used to have a Vietnam sniper who would put on what we call a hog's tooth. And a hog's tooth is a 7.62 round that is taken out of its casing, right? Drilled a hole through, and we run 550 cord. You can see it in this picture here. As you can see, I'm wearing my hog's tooth right there, right? So my hog's tooth is on a piece of 550 cord. You can't see but it's the way that the lore that this comes from for us is it comes from World War I, and it comes from the British snipers in World War I. And the idea was that when a British sniper would kill a Hun sniper, or excuse me, a German sniper, what they would do is they would take the last bullet out of that chamber of that sniper rifle. The idea is it's called the way of the gun. You live by the gun, you die by the gun. And if you take the bullet out of the sniper rifle or the gun that was meant to take your life and you wear it around your neck, you can never die. And so what we do is when you graduate sniper school, we put a 7.62 sniper bullet around your neck because now you're invincible, right? This is your actual hog's tooth. In practicality, a real hog's tooth comes from taking that bullet out of a sniper rifle, right? The round that was meant to take you or someone else's life. And so what we did was we took that bullet out of that sniper rifle. And part of this conversation was the good thing about 3.5 and the good thing about the men and women that we had in 3.5 and the leadership was that nothing was ever about us. It was always about the unit. It was always about the team. And so what we did is we took that bullet out of that chamber and we kept it. I didn't make a hog's tooth out of it. What we did was we got it back to the United States and we got that put on a plaque. And the plaque has an emblem of 2.4 on one side, 3.5 on the other side, and the bullet in the middle. Because we're all part of the 5th Marine Regiment. We're sister battalions. We went through the same sniper screenings together. We worked with sniper platoons themselves. We knew and cared for these Marines that were lost, and we understood a connection to them. And so the idea was the story was never ours. Somebody in passing once, a number of years ago, we lost the rifle. We didn't know where the rifle went. I had seen it once at 5th Marines. I showed my mom, 10 or 15 years ago. I took over to the 5th Marines, and it used to be in one of the shadow boxes of 5th Marines. And what we had heard was at the time I go through and I show her, it's on the weekend, right? And I'm like, my mom's cruising and like the battalion OOD comes down and it's like, who are you, right? Kind of like, what are you doing here? And like my mom's like getting all mad, right? Because she's like, that's him, he did this kind of thing, right? Defending her son, right? She's 4'11", right? Just ready to like kick somebody in the shin for me. And mess, right? Nobody, right? That's my son, right? So, but we didn't ever claim it. We never took credit for it. So we wanted it to be that way. Lieutenant Colonel Looney, the battalion commander, we had him on the cover of Soldier of Fortune magazine in July or August of that year with that bullet. So that same bullet that he's holding is the last bullet that was chambered inside of that rifle itself. Because it wasn't us. Like I said before, we are merely a portion of this story. We are not the story. One time somebody mentioned in passing, they said it was Pasciuti's rifle. And I'd like to advocate that this was never my rifle. This was Parker's rifle, right? This was 2.4's rifle. All we did was bring it home. And that's what we wanted to be able to talk about. And the reason why we started to come forward, and when Brandon reached out, we had a conversation. For a long time, we haven't really taken credit for it or really talked, because I don't think credit needs to be taken for something like this. What we saw was other people were taking the story and making it their own. Right? And then what was happening was people were monetizing it, right? And they were trying to say through either innuendo, through books or movies, right? There was opportunities where people were leaving a lot up to interpretation for claiming this thing that happened. I'm not interested in credit or accolades for this. What I'm interested in is making sure that the story of Corporal Parker and his team, because we paid in blood for this weapon system, and all we did was return it back home. And so from here, what you can see that's myself and Sergeant Kevin Homestead. What you'll see on the rifle is here is what they did was they put a Tasco 3x9 scope on it. One of the tactics that we use when a sniper team, so this goes into the whole piece, right, is there was a lot of bad things that were said about Corporal Parker's team. One of the allegations was they had all fallen asleep and that they were listening to iPods or whatever the things were. Remember, just like the Marine Corps, snipers are fighting for their existence in every single argument we have. And so oftentimes people want to vilify what we do, what happens, how things went down. But what tells me as a sniper, one of our procedures is if you're being overrun and you're going to die, the first thing you do is shoot your radio. The second thing you do is destroy your scope for your rifle. Why does Corporal Parker's gun have a Tasco 3x9 scope on it? Because he destroyed the scope when he was about to get killed. He understood his mission first. So you'll see here, we have the original paint job, right, that we have. So you'll see it's worn away, the paint job from the rifle itself. The Tasco 3x9, which is welded on itself. And then they used a lot of the same techniques that we use here to be able to wrap the barrel to give themselves some opportunity. And then you'll see here, that's the sniper itself, what's left of him, right, on there, and then the weapon system itself. So what happened after this is it went back to the United States. The video got kind of wrapped up. The Marine Corps kind of took it. I don't know what's happened to that. But what scared us for a long time was it went to 5th Marines. And then when it went to 5th Marines, and the Afghan conflict kind of picked up during the big surge, 5th Marines got sent to Afghanistan. And when 5th Marines got sent to Afghanistan, they had to put everything into storage. And what we had heard when I had come back to it, 10 years later, was that the legend or the lore that kind of happened was this was put into storage with all of 5th Marines equipment while they were gone in Afghanistan, and they stopped paying the bill. And so for about 10 years, we believed that this was auctioned at a Marine Corps auction. It turns out the museum had found it, but it was in the back of the armory at 5th Marines. That was just like nobody knew. It was just kind of sitting in some dark, like Indiana Jones style, thing, in a museum kind of stuff. And so that's our team that came forward. That's Sergeant Jimmy Proudman, Jared Ramsey, Doc Barth, Brett Sidful, Tony Scardino, and then you'll see Gabe White, which is my partner there. And you'll see the hog's tooth around all of our necks here. That's the thing that was kind of bonded us together. I asked that this picture doesn't get reproduced. I got to be able to take a work on it, so some stuff on it. But I will reach out to all of those individuals and then ask them for permission if they'd like that as well. All right, so I have an opportunity to answer any questions that you have about anything in this story. Yes, sir.
I heard recently that you're out of Marine Corps, that they've done away now with the snipers.
Yep.
Right? And, you were talking about how the snipers were always fighting for this.
Yep.
But can you say how they came to that
Sure.
decision?
And again, I'm not going to bash any decision that anybody made, and I can tell you a lot of the nuances to why. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, right? So after World War I, during World War I, the Marine Corps developed a long-range shooting program, and then after World War I, we disbanded it. During World War II, we developed Marine snipers, right? And then after World War II, we disbanded it. Happened in Korea, disbanded it. After Vietnam, we created it again, Carlos Hathcock, Chuck Mahoney, right? And then what we decided to do was we decided to keep snipers around and keep a professional schoolhouse. Well, we're in an interwar period, right? After 20 years of war and 30 or 40 years of having a sniper school, this is a natural, to my opinion, this is a natural process in the cycle. I believe that the Marine Corps will need snipers again, right? Because just like the Army says, right, the last 100 yards always will be won by the infantry. The same thing is true for precision marksmen. There is an opportunity for snipers here, and as a sniper instructor, as a member of the Scout Sniper Association, and as part of the dissenting opinion for this decision, what I advised a lot of snipers to do is I said, you have a choice. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. I am not happy, as AJ Pasciuti, right? I'm not happy about the decision. I understand why the decision was made. But snipers now have a choice of what they want to do. There were reasons that the Marine Corps was very well justified into why they sunned down the sniper program. Now, the snipers themselves and the culture itself can kick and scream and be as upset as they want about this, or they can regroup. And they can figure out, just like the Marine Corps does every year when we advocate to Congress on why we actually exist in an environment that has 4, now 5 other services that do the same thing that we do. We have to make the Marine Corps want snipers again. We have to make the Marine Corps understand that there's a need for snipers again. The Marine Corps made a decision with the understanding of the situation that they had, and I can't fault them for that. But what I asked the snipers to do is take an opportunity to realize what got the Marine Corps to this decision. How many stories like Corporal Parker, or how many stories like the sniper mess-ups in Iraq, in Afghanistan, right? How many of those stories did it get to the point where the Marine Corps was like, you know what, I've had enough. You cause me more problems than you do good. And so I can't blame the Marine Corps for what they did. But the hard part about this is right here, what we can calculate is I can calculate on the battlefield that day 2 casualties. We killed 2 men that day. But what we cannot calculate, just like medicine, is I cannot calculate how many lives we saved that day. I know Kyle Burton is one of them, right? And he owes me a beer. No, yeah, right. Hey, Kyle, remember? He's like, all right, geez, right, you know. But what we'll never know is how many Marines that we did save. What I can tell you is that in that inter-period, 2004 to 2006, estimates of 150 to 200 service members were killed by Juba on his rampage through Iraq. So what I ask is that anybody that has the opportunity to talk to commanders and talk to this is saying, hey, listen, there is an unaccounted for gain that we are losing, unrealized gain that we have now just said we're no longer going to have, right, when we get rid of this opportunity. Because, like I explained earlier, I am both a reconnaissance Marine, I am a sniper, and I'm an infantryman. 03 is the front of my MOS and has been and always will be. The difference is this, is that snipers do not believe, recon Marines do not believe that they are better than the infantry. What they are is different than the infantry. No sniper has ever won a war. No recon Marine or recon platoon has ever won a war. Who wins the war is the infantry. What recon Marines and snipers are is we are attachments that help them make war better. Just like Kyle Burton, my job is to be an insurance policy to say, I got your back. Allow you to work in a space so you can be a great infantry Marine. And so where we continue to press forward is saying, this is what we want to be able to idealize as a culture, as a service, is saying, this is who we want to be for the continued infantry space. Does that answer your question, sir? As best as I can? Yeah. I'm not stoked on it, but I think that we're going to get to the right answer eventually. Yes, sir.
So, when's that last little 3-minute slow play going to show up in the Marine Corps Gazette?
Unfortunately, yeah, well, I appreciate that. The Gazette won't publish my articles, unfortunately. With the Infantry Marine course, sometimes certain things are too different for the service, and we understand that. It takes time. Evolution, not revolution. I love the service as much as the next Marine around here, but sometimes the opportunity for evolution we have to, I have been told in my life that I am stubborn. I wasn't listening most of the times when they were saying it, but oftentimes what I have to do is I have to come to the realization on my own. And I think that in some ways with Force Design 2030 and Force Design, and the understanding of the Infantry Marine Corps, so the idea of snipers, is that sometimes we have to come to the decision on our own and not be forced into it. And so I think that will happen over time. And that's just my personal, not a service level perspective or a service level opinion, that is just my personal opinion. Yes, sir.
I noticed in one of the pictures that you had the leather rifle strap on.
Yes.
World War II.
Yes.
Do you still use the wrap around and
Yes.
all that? You still do that?
Very much so. So I actually really like that sling. You know, again, there's always like the OG kind of stuff, right? You know, like there's like the old core kind of thing, right? Why I like the leather sling versus a canvas sling is the leather sling had some give to it. And for us, a sling was issued to us just like a rifle. And so we would get a brand new sling and I would use saddle soap and I would stretch it and it's just like a baseball glove, but you take care of this thing. The thing with the snipers is like, we fall in love with our craft. The sniper and recon ideology and what we brought to the IMC was an understanding that Marines are allowed to think differently. If we teach a Marine to solve a specific problem, when he moves into a scenario and the problem doesn't look like what he was trained to do, he can't solve it. What we have to make is a problem solver. It's a change of the fundamental ideology of how that young Marine looks forward. And so the same concept, was we fell in love with the craft of hunting other humans, right? And as callous as that sound, every facet of our life revolved around that, to include saddle soaping my sling so it had the appropriate amount of stretch that I was used to when I wanted. So even a city boy can do this, right? So the appropriate amount of stretch when I needed it to be able to interact. But there's a ton of modern slings right now that have their own way. I'm just of an older breed. In that.
I was taught by an old Vietnam
Yep.
Marine.
We still use them to this day. Yes, sir.
So where is the rifle now? It's with.
John Bernstein has it in the museum armory.
Oh.
Yep. So
Just hear that.
yeah. So okay. So they were great. The museum's great. A couple years ago, I had through the sniper connections. There's like, hey AJ, it's at the museum, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard that before, right? So I like call up and I like they give me an email, and then I email over, and like John Bernstein and the museum was like, yeah, sounds great. Yeah, you're the guy who killed this, right? You're totally your rifle. Like a healthy dose of skepticism. I was like, no, I get it. And like, yeah, we've heard that before, right? You know, so I had to like kind of go through his like security checks, right? You know, like the serial number, what it said, right? Describe some stuff, and then I passed his kind of inspection. He's like, all right, come and take a look. And then I got there and like showed him these pictures. He's like, oh, okay, all right. So you were the guy, right? You know, but I get it. You know, people want to do that. I had a couple of instances where I think it was 2007, 2008. A buddy of mine called me up, another sniper, another gunner now, or retired gunner now. He calls me up from SHOT Show over in Las Vegas, and he was like, "Hey Jay, you never guess who I'm talking to, right?" And he's like, "Well," I'm like, "Hey, what's up, Tony? How's it going?" He's like, "I'm talking to the guy who killed Juba," right? You know, right? And I was like, "Hey, well, tell him great shot, right? You know, tell him great, thanks for what he did, you know, kind of thing." So, you know, I get it. There's a whole bunch of that stuff out there. But again, people are looking for their own image. What I'm interested in very much so is looking at what this three parts to the story. Yes, sir.
I'm very curious. Juba, did Intel or your unit, were they able to figure out if it was in fact one guy? Was it several using the weapon? Or
So here's where it gets a little muddy. This is the guy that we killed. This is him. We believe him to be Syrian, of Syrian descent. And that's based off some of his features. This is Jimmy Proudman's glove. This is on our intelligence analysis of this piece. Clean cut professional. This is the guy. The problem that we faced, and where Juba may have been him. So like, there's a high, based off the weapon system that he had, what he was able to do with it, where we saw him, high probability he in fact was Juba. But the problem with that theory is that after he was killed, videos continued to be released. Now, whether they were recorded beforehand and they were trying to continue propaganda, right? Because we had propaganda that came out after this. Leaflets were dropped all over the region that showed there's a different picture of him slumped over in the car that has the bullet hole through the window and him slumped over with a sniper rifle next to him. There were leaflets that were dropped all over. I have a copy of one of the leaflets as well that was shown like, if you fight us, this will happen effectively. I don't speak Arabic or read it, but that's kind of the gist that I got out of it. I'll have a professional kind of take a look at it. But maybe that was a counter propaganda that they wanted to put out and say like, no, hey, we're still doing the thing. But that trailed off very quickly after he was gone. There was images or ideas of a Dragunov that was kind of moving around. A very famous movie talked about that to a myriad or a haziness of truth. And then there was a Dragunov that was found in the back of a vehicle checkpoint. Within a few weeks after this happened, there was another sniper hide using like the tail light of the vehicle as the apparatus in which they'd shoot through. That was picked up in a vehicle checkpoint near Fallujah, I believe, a couple of weeks later. Yes, sir.
will the weapon be displayed as you captured it, or as
The only thing that's different now, from what I've seen, the only thing that's different now is that's gone. Everything else is exactly the same. I looked at it and I showed it, like the scuffs, obviously the blood's not there, but like the stuff is all there. It is exactly the same as it was captured, other than the Coban wrapping on the front. Still a Tasco 3x9, and it's welded on. Yeah. So when I got to shoot the rifle a couple of days later, the rifle shot, it was a minute low and a minute left, right? So I mean, effectively an inch at 100 yards, kind of low and left, but for what he was doing, where he was at, 150 meters was kind of where his range was at. He was well within the capability of the weapon system. What we like to believe is that, luck is where preparation and opportunity meet. And I'd rather be lucky than good any day. And so we were very fortunate. We set a trap for him. It wasn't just the sniper platoon. It wasn't just, and I said earlier today when I was talking with Caitlin, is I may have pulled the trigger on this person and Juba, but I wasn't the person who killed him. It was the collective. It was our entire unit. It was the intelligence Marines who helped us, the CSI version of what we were trying to red cell this thing. The company commander had to yell at me to get me back into what I was doing, right? Sergeant Burton, like it was 3-5. And so when it came time to take advantage of this opportunity, and it was the battalion commander is the person who needs to be on there. He was the leader of the unit. He allowed this space to happen. That's what we needed to do for this. It was 3-5's way of being able to bring this story back home and bring this rifle back to Marine Corps hands. Any other questions that I have? Okay, well, I am here for the next day. I'll be here all day tomorrow. I am at your disposal for whatever you need. If there's any follow-on questions, and the longer I stay without sleep, the more honest I get with my answers. But yeah. I want to thank you for everything that you do. I remember, I believe I may have been you, sir, or you, sir. I walked up when the first time I had been in the museum and the rifle was being talked about, and it was you, sir. Is that correct? There was a group. What's that? Yeah, yep. There was a group of Marines, and he was telling the story, and we're going through some of the pictures, and it was the first time that he and I had met, I think, in person. We had talked with our phone a number of times, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go see something cool?" And we walk over, and there's the museum telling our story. Oh, it was Sterling? Oh, okay, thank you. One of the things that I talked with Caitlin about this morning was what we want to be able to pass on to the next generation, right? So I'm retired. I don't have my retirement pin on yet, so forgive me. But the idea is that we wanted to pass on is one of the things that I suffered from tremendously growing up was a lack of self-worth or a understanding. So when we tell this story in this vacuum, it's this understanding like, well, obviously AJ knew everything that he was doing and he's like the best sniper in existence. It wasn't that way at all. It was absolutely the opposite, right? Of where we had a number of people along the way who helped see something in me and help me along the way, which is the same reason why we created the Infantry Marine Course the way that we did. Because it was what you are doing now for my generation is turning around and saying, my generation is valuable, right? And you're honoring my generation. And I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. Now it's my generation's responsibility to turn around and tell the next generation that they are in fact valuable. And our job is now to make them better than us. And so when we see the ideology or we see the iconography of the John Bassilones, right, or the Smedley Butlers, and we think that they're like superhumans, right? Well, no, they might be 150, 130-pound kids from Sunnyvale, California that are just placed in the right position and trained by a good organization of people that believe in them and allow them to create and achieve their own potential. And it's things like this organization that continue to create that. So thank you so much for that opportunity. And hurrah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
Eagle Scout 1969.
Yay, all right.
Kentucky Home Council.
All right, yes. I was the Polaris district in Northern California.
Yeah,
Yep.
actually, we had a group of scouts from Crockett Council here
Really?
yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I learned a lot in the Eagles.
Really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you very much.
He's an Arabic speaker. He can read your stuff.
If you like, it's up on the wall. I'll put it up there. And I love, we used to say at my force platoon, we would say,